Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of The Mistake Zone, your weekly dose of our lives and the mistakes within them. My name is Jaren Wade. Joining me, as always, one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Matt Alba. Hey, Matt.
Yo.
How are you doing?
Jaren, I'm doing bad.
Matt, normally you say you're doing good, and that kind of sets up the vibe for the Mistake Zone episode that all our friends are going to join us on. But Matt, not sure about the vibe today, but what's up, man?
Jaren,
why are you not feeling good?
Jaren, I've made a mistake.
Okay, fitting, considering where we are. Matt, what was your mistake of the week?
Jaren, I think that a lot of people have probably seen the story online of the guy that reviewed the sugar-free Haribo gummy bears.
Okay.
Do you know which story I'm talking about, Jaren?
No, please give me a quick summary to set the context of the story.
The quick summary of that review is some guy left a review on, I think it was Amazon, about sugar-free Haribo gummy bears. And
yes,
this whole review is basically about how that thing is basically a bowel cleansing candy.
Great.
And Jaren, I thought, hey, like, you know, I'm down. I like gummy bears. Like, I'll try some gummy bears. 'Cause it sounded like in the review the guy ate the whole pack, and then that's what gave him mad diarrhea.
Right.
Jaren, you don't need to eat the whole pack. I ate like 10 gummy bears, and I'm dying.
Matt, that sounds disgusting.
Oh man, Jared, I thought like, oh yeah, you know, whatever. In the review, I'm pretty sure that guy says that he eats the whole pack, and then that's what makes him sick.
Right.
But I ate like 10, maybe 15, and I'm feeling pretty bad.
So Matt, I'm assuming that there's more than 15 in this pack. You have a remainder of a bag that is potentially dangerous to you or anyone who ingests its contents. Matt, what are you going to do with the rest of these gummy bears?
Jared, I bought them. Obviously, I'm going to eat them.
Matt, I'm not sure you're connecting the dots here properly given your current state, but Matt, I know where you're coming from. When I make a investment, I want to get the most out of said investment. And Matt, I think I know where else you're coming from, considering the households we grew up in, where I don't know about you, Matt, but I was shamed growing up when it came to wasting food and throwing away food, where if I pay, Matt, and I'm assuming these gummy bears were, you know, still an investment where you still want to get your money.
It's like $5.
I'd still feel bad about that. That's because maybe in my twisted head, when I think gummy bears, I'm trying to buy around those, you know, $1 packs, $2 packs. So if I'm paying $5 for gummy bears, you know that I want to make the most of that $5. But Matt, over under, how likely will you need to reach a washroom during this recording?
I'm hoping I don't have to, because I ate those gummy bears about like 4 hours ago. My stomach, I can feel it like gurgling right now.
Okay.
But I'm hoping I don't need to go to the washroom.
Matt, and if there's one thing we know about the Mistake Zone, I think this is a podcast of hope, Matt. And I hope you also don't go to the washroom. But Matt, speaking about unfortunate events, I wanted to take this opportunity at the beginning of the show to pour one out for one of our fallen friends. Matt.
Oh no, what happened, Jaren?
I have to report to you on this episode that unfortunately my Splatoon 2 Nintendo Switch Pro controller is now out of commission.
Oh no.
Matt,
Jaren?
It's not necessarily the joystick drift, but if I were to say I'm holding up, like directly up on my left analog stick, I'll be holding up and then it will essentially begin to position itself. Even though you're holding up, it will trigger that you're kind of tilting it up. So I noticed this when playing the Splatoon 3 campaign the other day, where my Inkling would be running and then all of a sudden, even though I'm pressing up, they'll start to do a light walk. And I started noticing this a lot more during salmon runs, and because I tried to see, okay, maybe I can just recalibrate it. And I'm not sure if you've done the analog stick calibration for on the Nintendo Switch, but it's one of those things where it shows you where the essentially the analog stick is in its radius or whatever. So I would be holding up, and then it would gradually start shifting up and down towards like the middle and that tilt section. So Matt, this Friday is Bayonetta 3. And if we want to do that Bayonetta episode, I admitted to myself that I needed a new Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which I picked up today with some, reward point stuff with the PC Optimum, if our online friends are aware of that or familiar with that. So my only bummer part about this is it's a standard, the standard Pro controller, no funny colors. And Matt, I'm gonna miss that pink and green boy. It got me through a lot of gaming moments, but to see it go out like that made me feel really bad, Matt Alba.
Yo, Jaren, this is the optimum time to learn how to fix a controller now that you have a dead one.
That's also true. I might actually look into that as well. I think that would be a really fun project just to see what I can essentially do. I was kind of looking around too to see what other alternatives there were in terms of controllers for the Switch, because Matt, the Pro controller, I think controllers in general are really expensive these days.
They're like $100 almost, at least 100 Canadian almost.
Yes, pretty much. And I think I was more okay with doing the purchase since I was able to get like 30 times the points if you have the PC Optimum, or if you're aware of the program, you'll know how that is. Plus, since I used a specific card, I got 5,000 points as well. So that kind of, the mental gymnastics of, okay, at least I'll have points to use for a future purchase and stuff like that. But Matt, when I was playing Splatoon the other day and I saw my character start to run into the walk, it made me feel real bad.
I mean, Jared, I'm looking at the Pro controller right now. There's only like 2 screws that I can see on it.
Yeah.
And they're both like at the handle. So you may be able to even just like switch the handles. So at least you have handle colors.
Oh, that's a good point, Matt. I'll totally look into that. Maybe. But Matt, in between yucky gummy bears and fallen Nintendo Switch controllers, I saw you were watching some anime this week. And Matt, I know this is our Vampire Survivors episode, but Matt, you sent me some choice screenshots. Matt, you're still watching the Gundam Witch, aren't you?
Yeah. What was it? Gundam Witch from Mercury. Still keeping up with that.
So Matt, as someone who still wants to check this out eventually, how has it been progressing since we last talked about it?
It's very Gundam. I don't really know how else to say it.
Yeah.
And it's also very not high school drama, but like high school battle shonen, where...
All right.
Since that is kind of what half of the Witch from Mercury is, since it takes place in a Gundam pilot high school, basically.
Right.
There is the kind of, bullying aspects of high school. I don't know if bullying is like the right word. That might be a bit strong of a word, but like the kind of rivalry Yeah, the kind of rivalry you would see between like students, and like the more posterior students, like talking to the more classically shy characters.
Okay.
Like I think it's a fun series. Like it's a much more lighthearted than any other Gundam. I think I said that before, and
yeah, for sure.
It actually is now. I said before, I think the last episode we were talking about this, that it is only focusing on high school drama or high school like battles right now, but it is slowly through, I think, like the secondary characters showing that what their background is in relation to the war that's happening, like I guess outside of the school, because it's a very, I think, like Earth is trying to like revolt against all the people in space, because like Earth is kind of being seen as being like, if you're an Earthling, you're kind of like seen as like lowborn. I don't really know how else to say it.
Right.
So there's a lot of kind of like, so
classic space classism is what you're saying.
Yeah. Classic space classism is starting to show its head, right. And I think that's also a usual theme in Gundam.
Right. Okay. But yeah, I hate to admit it, Matt, but some of the, let's say, Jaren subreddits I follow, I've been seeing a lot more fan art from Witch of Mercury and Matt. Those are some nicely designed characters, and those are some really good fan pairings, if you know what I mean.
I actually really like the character designs for this because I feel like I think more than any other Gundam, I really like the character designs in this show a lot. Right. It's a nice like variance between all the characters, and I don't know, it's nice to see. It's nice to see. They're not all just like kind of generic looking soldier kids, I guess.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're from all the characters I have seen, there is a nice variety to the design. And I don't know, for some reason when you first told me about this, I had Darling and the Franxx like really stuck in my head. Then again, I always had Darling and the Franxx stuck in my head. So I was kind of associating what I believe the look was to that, and to actually see the characters, and then of course the screenshots that you shared with me, I was actually pleasantly surprised at the art direction. So yeah, it's definitely another reason for me to check this out. And have you been watching anything else, Matt, that you wanted to kind of quickly share?
No, nothing else new. Like I've just been keeping up with Blue Lock, which is still super powered soccer, or slowly becoming even more super powered soccer. Right. I've been keeping up with like Chainsaw Man. Jared, I think in the past like 2 weeks I've rewatched Cyberpunk like twice.
Really?
Yeah. Jared, I really like that anime.
It's a really good anime, Matt. And how do you, before we move on, I know earlier this week there were reports noting that I believe this came from a CD Projekt Red community manager, essentially confirming that while I guess CD Projekt Red would like to explore more anime projects in the future, there are currently no plans to at least a sequel to Cyberpunk Edgerunners, which I think that's something we kind of discussed back in our episode that really explored it, where we thought that was really the end of David's story. I know at the time we didn't really touch upon this, but with some of the latest Cyberpunk updates, they did add a few side missions, that let you unlock David's jacket. I believe Falco makes an appearance, makes not necessarily a direct reference to Lucy, but there's an implied message there as well regarding the status of her. And yeah, how do you feel? I guess we discussed this, but how do you feel seeing the confirmation that Edgerunners 2 isn't necessarily being planned, but there is some hope, or at least interest in possibly future Cyberpunk anime projects?
I think that's kind of like ideal for me. Like we said in our Cyberpunk episode, I do think that David's story is done and it should stay done. I think I would be actually disappointed if they tried to shoehorn a way for David to come back in.
Right.
But with them saying that they might want to do another like anime season or like content, I think that that's best because it makes it also sound like it's not going to be a David story or related to him in any way at all. And I think that, like we said, a Tales from Night City would be really, really cool.
Yeah, and even if they want to tell an actual story throughout, another 7 episodes, I agree with your sentiment that maybe something more corpo-facing would be really ideal for me, just to kind of give a different vibe, just because even though we did explore the street kids, I think a good contrast would just straight go into the corpo lifestyle, and maybe you can see hints of Lucy considering her background. But yeah, I think it is something that I hope they eventually do explore in the future, another animated project, just because, as you said, Matt, I feel like Edgerunners was such a strong offering. It got a lot of people back into Cyberpunk, and I do think it really kind of helped with that reimagining, or kind of the redemption arc for Cyberpunk as a whole, which is really nice to see. Plus, with new Cyberpunk projects coming, I'm assuming way, way, way in the future, maybe that's when discussions with Studio Trigger will hopefully spark up again. But yeah, I would love to explore something more on that end, just because it has been something that is in and out of my mind the past few weeks ever since I finished it. Just strong characters overall, strong designs. And Matt, we're at that point where I'm not surprised, but man, a lot of people cosplaying Lucy. A lot of people. Some Rebecca as well.
Yeah.
But I feel like Lucy is that prime cosplaying material, which, speaks to the designs of the characters overall as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, Matt, I still need to go back as well and watch the dubbed version. Ever since you told me about it, that's also been on my mind. But maybe something in the next few weeks. But to kind of end off the anime corner, Matt, I know friend of the Mistake Zone friend, Rakush, wants to come back on. Are we going to confirm right now a Chainsaw Man episode in a few weeks?
Yeah, I think we're going to be definitely doing a Chainsaw Man episode in the next few weeks.
All right. Sounds good, Matt. I think that will also force me to watch some anime. I know I don't know about you, Matt, but I love browsing the local, not a local, but, the bookstore chain, which is Chapters here. And Matt, a lot of Chainsaw Man volumes.
Yep.
Might have to pick some up just so I have the reference material. But yeah, man, some fun coming up. But in terms of anime, anything else, Matt, or just reliving your Cyberpunk and some Gundam?
Just reliving.
Okay, Matt. Matt, I need to pick up Bocchi the Rock or whatever it's called.
I need to start that as well.
Matt, you know how Bocchi is in my heart. One day we'll get that season 2. One day. We're not going to get that season 2.
Nope.
So, Matt, a little peek behind the scenes for the Mistake Zone. I know before we brought back this incarnation of whatever the Mistake Zone is right now, we did do an episode 0 just to kind of get into the groove of things.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about, I think, 2 games during that episode. And one of those games was Vampire Survivors, which has honestly, to me at least, taken the world, or at least gaming, by storm ever since I believe it debuted in just around December 2021. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's something that, I guess let's just get into it, Matt. How did you discover Vampire Survivors?
Jaren, I'll be honest with you, I don't even remember. I think it just showed up in something I was watching one day. I feel like maybe a podcast I was listening to mentioned it, and I looked into it, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty fun. It's pretty fun. It reminded me a lot of Devil Daggers. I don't know if you remember that game.
Right.
But kind of the concept of it's a very finite thing that you're trying to clear, and it's just kind of always the same, and it's kind of bite-sized. I don't know, it just reminded me a lot of Devil Daggers, and I'm like, oh yeah, I like Devil Daggers, and this is way easier than that. I'll stick with the Vampire Survivors.
I know for me personally, this was something that really took, I guess, the streaming culture by storm. A couple of months ago, I think, me, I love me some VTubers, and there was a period where a lot of VTubers were also playing Vampire Survivors, and that finally got me to come around and actually pick up the game. One, I saw it was on sale for normally here it was around $3, but I saw it one day on sale for $2.30, so I picked it up and I haven't looked back since. Matt, at the time of recording, I have a recorded playtime of 63 hours, and it's something that, I don't know, to me, Vampire Survivors, I guess before we get really into it, Vampire Survivors, how would you classify Vampire Survivors? Just because when I first played it, it really reminded me of I know this is going to sound unfair, but bear with me. It gave me the aesthetics of, that era of twin joystick shooters mixed with a roguelike of sorts.
Yeah.
And I think what threw me off with the Vampire Survivors when I first picked it up was the fact that even though it reminded me so much of a twin stick shooter, there is no second stick control. For the most part, you are essentially just moving a character around, picking up XP, mowing down enemies, and building your character for the remainder of the run while selecting which power-ups, which active weapons, which passive abilities you want to kind of continue on for the next 20-30 minutes. And it really did take me a while for the game to finally click, just because when I first played Vampire Survivors, it was a lot of trial and error. And I think this goes to show what makes Vampire Survivors so special. I know this was a take on, I believe, one of the original games in the genre was Magical Survivors.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong again, Matt, but
I think Magic Survival.
right, Magic Survivor.
I think it was.
Survival. And again, it's kind of one of those situations where you have the originals, but then it's one of the predecessors that end up taking the spotlight from it, unfortunately. But for what it is, Vampire Survivors is something that once it clicks, it is just sensory overload. It's a lot of flashing lights, but at the same time, it makes you feel really powerful in a sense that hey, you essentially become a bullet hell boss, and I think that's part of the appeal. Not only is it the low barrier of entry, but it's the fact that it becomes a spectacle pretty fast. And I don't know about you, Matt, but to me, early to mid game Vampire Survivors, when you're first starting out, when you're first learning the ropes and you're kind of getting a hang of everything, that is one of my, in recent memory, such an unmatched gaming experience, just because it's not only is it, again, I keep saying sensory overload, but it is this trial and error, trying to see what sticks, trying to see what ends up going together. And the fact that we followed it through early access, 1.0 just came out last Thursday on October 20th, but to see it also grow, not only from early access to the full release, but just seeing it, how it's been changing, how it's been updating, how the developer has been kind of adding to it, has just been this roller coaster of an experience to follow through. And it's something that has been unmatched for me in terms of gaming experiences in a long while. But I think that's kind of my initial take of Vampire Survivors. Matt, when you think about it, when you think about playing Vampire Survivors for the first time, what comes to mind for you?
I think about how frustrated I was at this game, actually, because getting to 30 minutes the first time is so frustrating.
Yeah.
Because you don't, I guess, at least at that point, I didn't know what combines into what synergizes well with each other. I guess even how crazy it gets, I guess, past the 20-ish minute mark. Yeah, how many enemies are coming in, what you need to do to, I guess, survive up until that point. And it does have that kind of permanent buffs that you can take between matches. They slowly add together, and you can slowly get a little bit farther until you get past the 30 minutes. You're like, oh, nice. I finally cleared this first time. Let's do it again to make sure it wasn't luck.
Yeah.
And then you fail, and you're like, damn, maybe it was just luck. But always just iterating on what you did the last game, what worked, what didn't, and kind of creating your preferred loadout.
Right.
Those are all very, very fond experiences for me for this game. And like you said, even the sensory overload, kind of everything flying everywhere. You mentioned that it's like your bullet hell boss, and when I was looking more into this game, I saw a lot of mentions of people I don't know if it succeeded, but people trying to call the genre bullet heaven.
Oh, okay.
Which I think is actually a pretty good name, and I think pretty accurate.
Now that I guess this has become a established genre, just given the fact that it's simple presentation for the most part, it's a really easy, it's gameplay mechanics that are really, that you can really grasp onto pretty easily as well, where we are seeing a lot more, I don't want to say clones, but people iterating on what this is. And has there been what are people calling this genre now, Matt? Is it, I do like the name Bullet Heaven, but I feel like that probably won't stick to the masses. Are these just survivor games at this point, or survival games have a different, we know what a survival game is, but are we has the general gaming populace coined this the survivor game? But what have you seen?
I've mostly just been seeing Bullet Heaven a little bit, but more commonly I'm just seeing it referred to as survivor likes.
Right. Okay.
In the same way that like soul likes are a thing.
For sure.
But
But I know we're going to touch upon some other games in the genre that have also caught our attention. But in terms of Vampire Survivors, I want to get back to talking about the climb and getting really accustomed to this game overall. And that's, I know you spelled it or you highlighted it perfectly, where I remember I too was pretty frustrated in the beginning just because I would see all these streams and seeing people hit, the 17-minute mark, the 20-minute mark, and thinking, how do I get there? But, that's part of the whole process where I remember the first time I hit 11 got destroyed. First time I hit 15 got destroyed. First time I hit 17. And it is slowly trying to build my character, trying to grind it out just so I can buy the upgradable ability or the upgrades from the main menu just to continue on with all my other runs. And again, I keep telling people that early to mid game Vampire Survivors is untouched for the most part, to me at least, because it is that learning experience that, you can apply to any roguelite of recent years, I believe. But for some reason, just how I think the accessibility for Vampire Survivors is. Again, I said how it was really hard for me to turn off my brain of, if only I could aim with, the right joystick, this would be a whole lot easier. But once it finally clicked, once I told myself I don't need the secondary stick, I can just move, pick my right upgrades, and it really started to all come together. And this kind of brings me to the achievements, just because, Matt, this is one of those games where it is pretty, I would say, I wouldn't say it's overly difficult to get all the achievements in the game, just because I know while we were following this game in early access, we would always message each other up, hey, there was an update, here are 4 more achievements for us to go after. And I actually, in how not overly difficult it is to get these achievements, they are essentially, hey, you need to play this game, you need to play with this character, you need to reach this level, you need to survive for this long in this map. I think that also helps with you kind of exploring all of the different characters, all of the different weapons, and it is easy to get into a preferred or your go-to loadout. But at the same time, the game, once you get past a certain point, it does essentially play yourself once you have enough upgrades to the point where, any build becomes viable, any loadout in theory becomes viable as well. And at the 30-minute mark, you have the Red Reaper that comes out. And even though there are 2 essentially not game breaking, but de facto ways to kill it, one of my favorite things was, before those 2 items were introduced, just people trying to freeze it, people trying all these different ways to actually kill the Reaper at the end was really cool to see, to follow as well. But yeah, I really do appreciate how the achievements are easy they're easy in that you just need to play a lot, you just need to grind it out a lot, but at the same time it allows you to explore pretty much all the aspects of the game, which I think is really smart, just because I feel like with this game, even if you're not an achievement hunter, or even if those don't really matter to you, they're an added incentive where, they're all pretty easy to get. Maybe this will be my first game that I get all the achievements, while still being able to learn the ins and outs of the games, which I thought was pretty cool. But Matt, what did you think of like the achievements as well?
I think the achievements are very, very well designed with regards to getting you to experience everything.
Yep.
Because like, I think other than some of the achievements being like, kill X amount of like this type of enemy, all of them are, I think, like either naturally occurring, or I can't remember this specifically, Jaren. I don't know if you remember, but none of these are secret achievements, are they? Like, it doesn't like hide the text.
I don't
or anything?
believe so. Yeah.
So the achievements not being those kind of secret achievements, just plainly telling you what to do, really, at least for me, made me think a lot more about like, how can I like get to this? Or for more of the, I guess, like more like cryptic ones, I'm like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Because I think for me, one of the first ones that really like kind of got my brain going was, oh, what is this like coffin achievement?
Right.
Like, oh, you have to go find this thing in whatever level. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, like, I've never seen that. I guess I'll just like walk around a bit. And that's when and that was like way back when I think we didn't even have the map in the game
Right.
yet. So you kind of just had to like wander until it shows up on your as like the arrow on the like sides of your screen.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like that's what that is. Like, and yeah, I don't know. I like the way that they do their achievements in this game versus like other games where it's kind of like a, hey, do this milestone
Right.
type thing.
And
Yeah.
don't get us wrong, there are milestone achievements in the game as well, but again, given how the other achievements are structured, where it straight up tells you, hey, play as this character, evolve this weapon, use this weapon. I do think that in place of a proper tutorial, it is a good way to kind of have a guided experience for someone who might not know what to do next. And it's just an added incentive where, to me, a lot of this isn't necessarily what the traditional achievements have become, but more so, hey, this is your next set of challenges. This is what you should look into, or hey, you can do this to unlock something else to further add to the experience. So yeah, it was something that will stick with me for a while of, hey, new update drop, let's get these achievements, let's explore what's new. And again, it gives you a reason to jump back into the game, even if you've pretty much got your go-to build, which kind of brings me to something that has been on my mind since I have put in 60 hours in this game, where I do say that, yeah, the early to mid game untouched, I love that exploration feeling where once you kind of get to end game Vampire Survivors, once you've maxed out all your different upgrades, once you've gotten all the characters, once you have the, the combination, the two items that really let you deal with the Red Reaper at the end, it becomes one of those things where, oh, okay, you have your go-to build. Once I was fully used to Vampire Survivors, I was just kind of jumping into the game just to get the newest achievements or unlock the latest characters. And then, again, the achievements were why I would jump back into the game, because once you get to the end game of Vampire Survivors, I don't know how you feel, Matt, but for me, there's a shift where it's, oh, I can't wait to see what I discover next too. Okay, I know for a fact that when I start this run, this is going to last half an hour, to the point where I don't want to say it becomes like a chore, but it's the fact that it's known quantities at that point, which again is fair because it's a game, you learn the game. But it's one of those things where in the back of my mind, when I start up a new Vampire Survivors run, I know I'm going to commit the next half an hour to this, and I'm probably going to build the same thing. I'm going to, of course, build these two items to deal with the Reaper, and for good or for bad, that's what the end game is at this point. But the journey to the end game, loved it a lot. But Matt, in terms of Vampire Survivors, one of the cool things are the different characters, ones that you're given off the gate, ones you've unlocked through a variety of different circumstances. But when you think about the characters of Vampire Survivors, Matt, who stick out to you? Who was your go-to in the beginning? Who's your go-to now? And even from an aesthetic point, like, who are some of your favorite characters?
I think at the beginning, my two go-tos were Gennaro, who starts with the dagger, and Imelda, who starts with the magic wand.
Me too, Matt. Me too.
And Jared, I don't know if you also feel the same way, but like, I think after the beginning, I never touched those characters.
I think when I think about early Vampire Survivors, Gennaro is honestly the one I kind of consider the de facto starter character, just because, one, he looks like a vampire survivor, but to a beginner Vampire Survivor player, the fact that even though he has the daggers, I believe his starting passive is he gets an extra +1 to his projectiles. Which, to a beginner, that's something that you automatically see you see it right away that it's in effect. You get an additional projectile at the start of the game. And I feel like that's huge for a lot of the different players. And, you know, I wasn't really getting a lot of success with him, but he was definitely one of the first characters that I gravitated towards. But it was eventually Imelda that I came around to just because of her passive ability, which was she gains additional, I think, XP or something every 5 levels. And in the beginning of this game, I thought, okay, I'm not going to be able to kill the Reaper right away. I'm just going to use her to grind it out, get as high as I can in terms of levels, get as much gold as I can, start building out my upgrade tree. But yeah, in between her passive ability plus her starting weapon as of the magic wand, which if will target the closest enemy to you. I don't know. I think her overall kit is such a beginner-friendly kit that I definitely gravitated towards her once I graduated from I just realized it wasn't working with Gennaro for me. But Matt, when it comes to who your go-to characters are, once you got to the mid-game, who were your go-to characters?
Once I got to the mid-game, I think I gravitated a lot more towards Pascalina, Pugnola.
Yep.
And those two. I think those two were like definitely my go-tos towards the middle game. A little bit of the Mario with the Bibles, because I really, really, really liked the Bibles for a long time. And now that I'm thinking about it, I realized that the further I got into Vampire Survivors, I dropped the Bible.
Right. Pugnola for me is probably my most played character in Vampire Survivors, just because I believe in terms of golden eggs, which is I guess when you unlock the mechanic, I'm not sure, it was something that was introduced in one of the patches during early access, but essentially when you kill select, I guess, boss enemies, a golden egg will drop. You can also purchase it from the vendor as well, and that gives you kind of a 0.1 increase to a specific upgrade ability. And I believe in terms of golden eggs, I have around 50 for Pugnola, but yeah, I think her starting weapons, which are, I don't know what they're actually called at the top of my head. I just I refer to them internally as the twin feather guns, but I believe those as your starting weapon is so strong. And I think design-wise, she reminds me a lot of Bayonetta to the point where
it has to be Bayonetta.
Or it just clicked with me. I loved playing Pugnola. But in terms of in terms of secret characters who I also really like, I think Leda is one that I play a lot just because his starting weapon is the upgraded magical wand, and that's really clutch for some of the different challenges. I believe he was the first character I cleared boss rush mode with. And Matt, I think before we continue on with characters, I wanted to say that in terms of updates during the early access, I think boss rush mode to me was one that really got me to the return to the game once I was in that end game mindset, just because it, as I said during previously, where, okay, when you're in the end game of Vampire Survivors, you start a run, you know you're in for 30 minutes. And by essentially the 15-20 minute mark, it's essentially autopilot at that point as well too. But with boss rush mode, I think a lot of the sensibilities you develop over playing this game, what you get used to for endgame, kind of get thrown out the window, and then you have to kind of think on your toes a lot more. It's a lot more active since you are actively dodging these stronger enemies, since you are dealing with heavy hitters, bosses come to you left and right as well, that you do have to think about your build loadout. You do have to think about how you're going to survive that 15-minute time frame. And yeah, like it was a welcome addition to me just because it really made me approach Vampire Survivors differently from how I was playing at that point. And it is honestly pretty difficult, I would say too, just because I've only cleared it a handful of times. And yeah, Matt, what did you think of boss rush mode when it was introduced?
I like boss rush mode. It's a nice change. I think the thing that like really makes me like boss rush mode the most is trying to figure out what you're going to pick up.
Right.
Just because I don't know about you, but like I don't think I've ever upgraded more than maybe one weapon in boss rush mode, if I've even upgraded one at all.
Yep.
Like I actually like can't recall, but like having to slap together a a really like bad build is really interesting. Plus, I think like some weapons are better if you're considering the fact that you're never gonna upgrade them. Like I
Right.
think that puts a different mentality on how you're gonna be playing. But like
Yeah.
all those stuff is like all those minor changes really add up to it being an interesting mode. And in addition, like the two, I don't know what they're called, like the two trap things that you can flip,
Yeah.
where like I think one summons more enemies and one just reduces the amount of time
Right.
that's left. I think that's like a nice little like dynamic choice that they put into that mode.
Yeah. I think in terms of all the bonus stages, Boss Rush is the one that I do go back to. I think with the other bonus stages, I did do them since they were tied to achievements or secret characters in some capacity. But once I accomplished those, I never went back. But Boss Rush is something that I will jump in every now. I think with every new update, I always pop into Boss Rush mode like a few more times as well, just to check it out, just to see if I'm any better at it. I'm not, but it was really a welcomed addition. But returning to the characters, Matt, I think two other characters stick out to me for, two different reasons. I think Queen Sigma, when she was introduced, has become one of my favorite characters, mostly because, again, it is I choose Sigma when I just want to be an even more powerful bullet hell boss, just given the fact that she's able to hold up to 5 or even more. I know she can hold more than 5 Arcana if you do something in particular, which I never do. But just the fact that baseline she gets 5 Arcanas, her starting weapon is nutty to me as well.
Yeah.
And
I think that's the strongest weapon in the game, to be honest.
yeah, I just like, again, Vampire Survivors is such a podcast game, especially once you get to the end game, where I do select her or Pugnala when I just want to get through any of the new achievements, explore any of the new content. But yeah, I do like the little trivia of her as well, where whenever you clear a level, when you hit the 31-minute mark and the White Reaper takes you out, I like how Sigma is the only one that doesn't necessarily quote unquote die. She just kind of teleports out of there, which I love that little touch of flavor. But Matt, in terms of the other character that comes to mind when I think Vampire Survivors, it's Toasty, mostly because I've yet to unlock Toasty the right way, where this is a reference to the Mortal Kombat franchise, where I believe if you kill the Green Reaper, something will pop up at the bottom right-hand corner, and you're supposed to hit down arrow plus enter when that guy appears to unlock Toasty. Matt, I have a 60% keyboard that doesn't have traditional arrow keys.
Oh, that sucks.
So if I wanted to unlock, and then I also play Vampire Survivors with a controller. So if I wanted to unlock Toasty the proper way, I would have to configure my keyboard in a way where I needed to press a combination to get both a down arrow and enter to register. But it's something I haven't, gotten around to. And I believe with the secret menu that they implemented during one of the updates, you can just input something to unlock Toasty now, I believe. But I don't know, Matt. I feel like that's my white whale that I need to unlock the proper way. But any other characters that stick out to you, Matt?
The one other character that I think we haven't mentioned that really sticks out to me in terms of I think just like funness of their setup is Cosmo. I really like Cosmo towards the end because I don't know. The bird comes with the other, like the dove and the black dove. But
is it a crow? I don't know what it is, but yeah.
But like, yeah, I really like that weapon, and I don't know.
Okay.
It being there, but you not having to like waste weapon slots on them, just seems like ridiculously strong to me.
Okay, that's something I should go back and play more Cosmos. But Matt, you opened the floodgates. We got to talk about the weapons. We got to talk about the items, and I think when you talk about the Bible, it really does bring this to my mind where there are definitely early to mid game weapons for Vampire Survivors, and then you have your go-to end game builds. But Matt, when you think about early Vampire Survivors, what were your go-to weapons? What was your go-to loadout, and how did that change over time?
I think really early, like Vampire Survivors, I think my early loadout was probably like Dagger, Fire Wand, Rune Tracer, Bible, and then like depending on like what I'm feeling, like those would be my like core four.
Right.
And maybe I'll like grab Garlic or Magic Wand. Or Lightning. Lightning Ring I used to like a lot. I don't know about you.
I think for me, when I think about early game, as I said before, early to mid Vampire Survivors for me was a lot of grinding, trying to get gold. So my runs were always Crown, always Clover. Needed those two for my items, my passives. And I think early game, I took Pentagram a lot. Not, Pentagram is the mid. I tried to take that towards the middle of the run once I have, an established Bible and Magic Wand were always ones that I would go for as well. And once I had those at least near max, I would go for Pentagram as well, just because it really helps with the grinding aspect of getting gold. It's one of those things where it sucks early game just because you're really rolling the dice with it. But once in a mid run, I would always go for Pentagram. And then, same Garlic plus the Red Heart was something I would always go for as well, just to help with survivability. But as, it went on that I had to give it up to Rune Tracer and its evolved form, No Future 1. I believe No Future is the best named item in the game, given it's just all caps. And honestly, every time I get No Future, I think of my favorite Seiyu, Sumari Uesaka, just because of her album No Future Vacancies. So whenever I build into that, I just think of her singing Pop Team Epic and feel good about myself, Matt. But I think once we get towards the mid game or of my time with Vampire Survivors, I think I would take Song of Mana a lot as well. Plus Lightning Ring I would take if I needed it, because Duplicator is something I still take to this day if that comes up, just because it's just so good for me, Matt. But again, those were kind of the items I gravitated. I would get Cross a lot just because I was taking Clover, so I can get the Heaven Sword as well. King Bible was such a go-to for early game. Whip, knife wasn't necessarily something I really went with as well. But as we go on, Matt, I think this really goes to what I think of, end game stuff, just because I would never take Clock Lancet. I would never take Laurel before, the Infinite Corridor and the Crimson Shroud were introduced. And the moment those were properly introduced for you to deal with the Red Reaper, I had to, I always take those now, for better or for worse. But Matt, if you were to start a fresh Vampire Survivors run right now, what would your go-to build be?
I think that depends on who I'm playing as, to be honest.
Right.
Because if I'm playing as Queen Sigma, I honestly, I always use 0 weapons on her other than her starter weapon.
Really?
Yeah. Queen Sigma, I think,
I should do that.
Ridiculously strong with the... Okay, just to take another step back, Jaren. What do you actually consider the mid-game and, late game? Because, I don't know if you have, a real definition in your head of, what separates them or not.
To me, when I say early to mid-game, the way I see it is this. Early game is, just starting out.
Yeah.
I think mid-game to me is when you're consistently making 20 to 25 minutes is what I consider mid-game. To you, what would you consider mid-game of your time with the Vampire Survivors?
Because for me, I was considering mid-game to be after you can consistently clear the level.
Okay.
Once you can consistently clear and you're just going for just clears with characters.
Yeah.
That's what I was considering mid-game.
Okay.
Because I know at that point, for me, I I don't know if like you made the same transition, but like I said, like when I was talking about early game, I liked characters like Gunnar or not Gunnar. I liked the weapons like dagger and magic wand and stuff
Right.
like that, and like fire wand. But I found that I transitioned away from those
Right.
because I didn't like how they were not targeting an area.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I didn't like the non AoE weapons because I found myself gravitating more towards holy water, more towards Bible, more towards lightning ring, axes, like stuff like that that would cover a lot of area, like indiscriminately, so that you could easily clear.
Okay.
But the thing that like really separated mid and late game for me, and I don't know if this is just a timing thing or if it's actually, I don't know, the actual like difficulty or changes that occur, but is when you start introducing Arcana to your builds. Because I think Arcana really changes how you start building your characters.
Definitely.
Because like once I got like, the ricocheting Arcana, I started using cross more. I started using dagger more. I started using axe even more. But like if I'm doing a full weapon run, I think Pugnala is like where I start, just because I hate trying to find both of those both of those guns.
Yeah.
If I'm not like if I'm not starting as her.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think regardless of the character I'm choosing, just because I think, I admitted it, whenever I play a game now, I end up building Clock and Laurel just so I can get to the corridor and the Shroud. But considering the passive items for those are picked, you have to pick up the rings, you have to pick up the meta, whatever they're called. Like, I call them like the keys, the red keys, even though they're not keys or whatever. But even with that, I'm picking up, I believe one's called the Sparrow. I'll just say Red Sparrow, Blue Sparrow, like those two guns. Of course, I'm taking a Terragasu so I can evolve them. But yeah, I think I'm pretty boring in that I'm always taking Clover, I'm always taking Crown, I'm always taking Duplicator, just because, especially once they introduced the fact that you can limit break a item, once you max everything out and then you get into limit break territory. I always pick up Crown, I always pick up Clover just so I can get to that end, like the end run or the end game of a run faster, so I can start going overpowered. I know for the longest time I would get to the limit breaks and then I would always pick either +1 to +1 might, +1 projectile, or even AoE at that point, just so to get maximum sensory overload going on as well. But yeah, I think in terms of my weapons, like I'm pretty much set there. Maybe I'll pick up a lightning ring just because I'm getting duplicator, but magic wand for sure. Maybe King's Bible if it comes up, but I'm always picking a rune tracer because I need no future. So that's pretty much how I play. And even if I'm playing Sigma, I end up doing a full weapon run, but I guess I'll definitely check out just having a one weapon run for her as well. But yeah, Matt, I think Pentagram was good again, but once you finally, once you're accustomed to the game, I stopped picking up Pentagram as well. But Matt, you brought up the Arcana system, which was again something that was introduced during early access. And same question, Matt, you're starting off a game, general character, what's your go-to Arcana right off the bat?
Usually beginning. I think beginning is like obviously a very strong one,
right,
if you're just like doing a random or just like, just wanting to play.
Yes.
I feel like you have to specifically pick Silent Old Sanctuary. If you have already limited your weapon amount. Blood Astronema being one of the new ones is like really fun. That really brought back garlic for me, just because of like how.
Okay, which one's that?
I think it's one of the newest ones. It's the one that powers up Garlic, it powers up Pentagram, powers up Song of Mana, and like the Lancet and Laurel.
Right.
If you want more sensory overload, Blood Astronema is where you go.
Okay.
Because they could just add so much stuff to it. But what I've like found actually that's been kind of interesting for me lately is just picking the random Arcana at the start and then seeing like where that takes your build.
Oh,
unless I get like Game Killer.
You're spicy, Matt. You're spicy. Matt, I'm a boring B. Any run I start, I always start with Mad Grove just because I need the 2-minute mark to essentially bring everything to you just to help with XP gain. And
you start
I don't know.
with Mad Grove?
I always start with Mad Grove.
Oh, okay. I've never started with Mad Grove. I always found it weird at the start.
Really? I take it just because it's passive of every 2 minutes, all the items get brought to you. It really helps with getting the XP for me just because, again, I build it in a way where I want to get to limit breaks as fast as I can, and that really helps me. And then once I get my weapons and things max out, that's when I start getting the passive items. That's when I start getting the rings. That's when I start getting the keys. So I think one of the ones that I used a lot when the system was first introduced was the health one. I forget what its name, but again, my early to mid game overall Arcanas was the one that gives you health, plus I think it does AoE damage equivalent to the health you gain, plus the whatever the Terragasu equivalent was, where you would get additional revives, and every time you revive you get stronger. And I feel like those two in terms of survivability were so clutch for me when I was learning the ropes of this game. But now that I do it, I should do random, but I honestly just pick whatever Arcana I can really benefit from based on the loadout I have currently. But it's a system that I really was glad was introduced just because it really did add that extra spice to the game. But so we went through the characters, we went through the Arcanas. I guess we can quickly touch upon it. Matt, do you have any go-to? What is your favorite map of Vampire Survivors?
I mean, I think my go-to map is just the library, just because of how easy the library is.
Yes.
I think it's more accurate for me to say that there's a map I don't like.
Yes.
Jared, I don't like the church.
Really?
I hate that level.
I hate Dairy Plant, to be honest. I don't know. Maybe it's because that one was the one when I think about my time with it, especially my mid-game time with it, Dairy Plant gave me so much trouble for some reason. I think once I unlocked the later levels, I was at a point where I was really comfortable with the upgrades I've chosen, my go-to loadout. I think there were points during, Cathedral where the Blue Reaper was annoying to deal with, but once I got over the Blue Reaper hump, then I guess, it really doesn't matter once you're in endgame Vampire Survivors because the game does play itself with your loadout. But when I think about my overall time with it, Dairy Plant is the one that gave me the most frustration, just because that was the one level I struggled with the most during my journey of Vampire Survivors. But was there anything for Church that sticks out to you, Matt, that makes you say, ooh, I don't like this level?
Yeah, I don't like dealing with the Blue Reaper in any level. I think that's one of the most annoying ones to deal with. But most of all for me, Jared, I just don't like the way that the church is laid out.
Right.
It's just having so much dead space with the what do you call it? Those kind of sky areas. Yeah. And I don't know. I just don't like the way that level's laid out. It doesn't conduct for me very nice. It's not very nice to walk around in. And I also don't like how far apart the items are, the ring and the megaleo items are. I don't know.
That's why you pick Mad Grove, Matt. That's why you pick Mad Grove.
No. Jared, I don't like to use up a power on Mad Grove.
Really?
Yeah.
I love Mad Grove, Matt.
Mad Grove plus, actually, I guess this is a very, very recent one, but the past few days, Mad Grove, the exploding light fixtures one, and Jubilee is a wild combo, just because of how much it brings everything to you. Have you done the final level for Vampire Survivors yet?
I haven't. I still have one more achievement. I have the fireworks achievement, Matt, that I still need to do.
Okay. During the fireworks is very interesting. It's a very good final level. All
right. But speaking about final levels, when they introduced so with Cathedral, there was an update during early access that introduced a final boss, a quote unquote final boss for at least that part of early access. And that I loved the final boss and I was really disappointed that it was a one and done thing for you just to get an achievement, and then Cathedral or whatever the level is called reverts back to its normal. And that's why I was so glad with Boss Rush for them to kind of bring back those mechanics into the Boss Rush mode, just because, again, we've said it throughout this episode, at some point the game does play itself. And for them to introduce a boss with different mechanics, I know just the fact that it had kind of attack paths that you had to actively avoid really added so much to, I guess, Vampire Survivors that I really enjoyed. And I know we were going to mention Holocure eventually, just because, given our mutual interests, Holocure is definitely something on the radar. But when I think about Holocure and just seeing how more attentive you have to be with the game, just because you're dodging different boss enemies, you're dodging different environmental hazards, I think that adds a lot to the genre itself, given how passive Vampire Survivors can get. So when that final boss was introduced to the game, it was something I really appreciated, and I once again really liked that it found its way back into the game in Boss Rush mode. But yeah, Matt, when you think about the final boss, that particular final boss, what went through your head there, if you recall?
I think that this boss came out after Holocure released, the very first Holocure,
right?
Like beta or alpha or whatever release. And like you said, it having kind of attack patterns that you need to dodge is wild to me inside of a Vampire Survivors.
Yeah.
Just because I felt like that was a very good thing that they added in Holocure. So to see it in Vampire Survivors is very, very good. I actually didn't realize that it was one and done, mostly because I guess I just never played the church if I didn't have to.
Right. And this kind of brings us to where do we want Vampire Survivors in particular to go? Just because, as we said last week or last Thursday of the time of this recording, Vampire Survivors hits 1.0, and in the dev blog post to accompany the update, in the end of the blog post, we get to the what's next section, and they note that we'll probably start developing something new in Poncle, but support for VS will carry on. As anticipated in the version 1.0 announcement, we'll need to do some quality of life improvements on niche mechanics like eggs and limit break, plus finishing the engine port. But brand new features are also in the works. And yeah, so now that we're at 1.0, Matt, I'm not sure what's really in store for post-launch content, but in terms of Vampire Survivors specifically, is there anything specifically you hope gets explored, just based on kind of how the Survivor genre is growing and just based on what is already in the game that could be expanded upon?
I think the one thing that I really want changed in Vampire Survivors is their hurry mechanic.
Right.
I wish that their hurry mechanic made time go faster instead of cutting your time in half.
Right. Agreed.
I think that that's really the only change that I would want with Vampire Survivors, off the top of my head at least.
Yeah, and I think, again, I'm not saying that Holocure is this is the next big thing, but I would also like to see if there were any future maps in Vampire Survivors, if there would be more world bosses that require you to be more active. Just because I do like having to memorize, simple attack patterns or like things you just have to be more, aware of, where we have all these levels that we can be passive in. So if there was a more active mode similar to Boss Rush, I think that would be really cool to explore as well. But overall, just seeing, again, like we've talked about Vampire Survivors so much, and we didn't like mention that, again, I said it kind of previously, but it has such a low barrier of entry in terms of price. Just seeing, I know with 1.0, everyone was expecting it to go up in price, and it did. I believe the base price is now $5, and like even that is still a steal. Matt, I know within our friend group, like every time a Steam sale has come around, we would always send each other or gift each other all these joke meme games. But I'll be honest, I've gifted Vampire Survivors like several times this year already, just because again, I think it's such an easy game to kind of pick up. And once you get really into it, you get really into it. Like the price of admission it's a steal, Matt. Like
It's on sale right now.
they could have charged $10 and this would like increase the price to $10. And like, I still believe no one would bat an eye just because it is that good of a game. And one that is really setting up this genre in itself, or at least making people more aware of it. Sorry, Magical Survival. So to see, I'm really curious to see how the genre itself kind of expands as well. But yeah, Matt, this was also something that I kind of just something I wanted to kind of get your perspective on. Just with Vampire Survivors and a lot of these Survivor games coming up, these seem like they're being made by really small teams. And this might be a silly question, Matt, but, you know, as someone who is more versed on the programming end of things, how much of an appreciation do you have, or what do you think in general when you see games like this come together, being so feature complete, or just being able to balance what like solid kind of gameplay design rather than falling victim to feature creep in a way? But what, as someone with more of a programming background, like how do you feel about these games kind of coming out with these smaller teams?
Wait, Jared, I get I get butthurt when I see like games like Vampire Survivors, because I'm like, damn it, this is so simple. Like I can fully understand why so many of these kind of games are coming out, because Jaren, this is a very simple game to make. Like even in concept, it's very simple. And I guess you're butthurt that I didn't think of something like this. And now even if I want to do something like this, it's like, now I'm just biting Vampire Survivors. I'm gonna go think of something else. I don't know.
Oh man, Matt.
Oh man.
But yeah. With the rise of Survivor games in general, what do you think makes a good one? Like what separates a Vampire Survivors, I'll just say it, a Holocure, from something that's a cash grab? I don't know. Say a hentai Survivors, not that I've played it or anything.
Honestly, Jared, I don't think I haven't played too many other Survivor likes. Like I really only played seriously played like Vampire Survivors and Holocure.
Right.
But I've seen a bunch of them, and I think like the thing that really like sets it apart for me is, one, I think for this particular genre, I think visual overload is very important.
Right.
I also think that unique items is very important, which I kind of appreciate Holocure more in that regard than Vampire Survivors, just because I think that their itemization is better.
Yes.
But I also think that like one of the things that kind of burns me on Vampire Survivors, like we've been saying throughout this whole episode, is when it becomes automatic.
Right.
Like I think that that's also an important part of like what'll make a survivor like good.
Right. Yeah, I think for me it's, you need the item, you need your loadouts, your items, your upgrades. They all need to make sense. I feel like with the Vampire Survivors, at least, there was some thought put towards what items you're picking up, what abilities you're getting, what upgrades, and like everything. Maybe it is just recency bias, but everything makes sense. Like I think the difference between a quality game and a cash grab in this part is having items that work well together. Like I'm not saying, I think with the Vampire Survivors, it's in theory any build can be viable, where with a cash grab it's, oh man, there's no like synergy between these items. And I think that's going to be another factor. And it is just, to me personally, I think overall aesthetic, visuals, like just the overall presentation will really help with it, just because when I saw Vampire Survivors for the first time, I really did enjoy like the knockoff Castlevania feel to it. And
Same.
I think it's an aesthetic that really works well. And when we do, or I guess we are talking about Holocure really quick soon, but even their kind of chibi style works with it as well. And there are some other popular Survivor games, like I believe Survivor IO, like the web browser version, is also picking up. But I think I looked at that, and visually, sure, the quality might be there gameplay wise, but visually it doesn't necessarily appeal to me. So again, it is something where I want to see how different artistic takes get or adapt to the genre, which can be pretty cool as well. But Matt, I feel like given our interest in VTubers, we need to mention Holocure. We need to like properly address Holocure.
Yeah.
A lot of different parallels, pretty much early access, small one-man development team. But again, this is a fan project that is essentially a celebration of the Hololive VTuber agency. And this was another game we talked about in that fabled episode 0 of the relaunch of the Mistake Zone. But yeah, Matt, I know since not that anyone has heard about it, but we did see a pretty big update and towards the end of August, early September, that introduced Hololive Gamers and Hololive Generation Zero to the game. There was a new map included, I believe. Was endless mode added there as well, plus hard mode, or was that kind of before that major update as well?
I think hard mode got added there. Endless was in it beforehand, but I think they reworked it to make it better.
But yeah, at the time of this recording, I know the developers have said that, they're taking a bit of a break just with everything coming up, plus holidays are around the corner, which, is understandable given that this is a fan game. This is one person and the quality is already there. I haven't really gone that deep into Holocure, mostly just because my Oshi or some of my favorite characters aren't necessarily in there yet, but with the introduction of, gamers and zeros, just being able to play as, Fubuki and Sora and ASCII and Suisei, like I jumped in here and there. But yeah, Matt, we did see a preview of Hachima as well, that she's being worked on. So when you think about kind of Holocure in its current state and leading up to it, like what are your general thoughts of it right now?
I think that Holocure actually, going back to something that you said at the start of this episode, I think Holocure is much more of a dual stick shooter than Vampire Survivors. It's just because of the way that game is designed. I really, really like Holocure. I really hope that like it being a VTuber themed game, actually, I guess more accurately, like a Hololive themed game, isn't going to push people away from this game just because they don't like VTubers and they don't want to like give it a chance.
Yeah,
because I think that like in and of itself, this is a quality game. Like the shorter time frame of it being a 20-minute run versus a 30-minute run is very appealing. The fact that it's constantly active, you don't get to that same level of Vampire Survivors where you can just idle.
Right.
Before that like 20-minute mark. I think you can get there a little bit after, but at some point you have to pick it back up again.
Yeah.
And like Jaren, like I'm a Hololive fan. Like
for sure.
I'll play. I'll always be like playing this game, and it's probably gonna be, now that Vampire Survivors is in 1.0, like this is gonna be my new Vampire Survivors I'm gonna follow as it updates.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of like minor changes. Like I think especially the characterization, or the characters all playing different.
Yeah.
And those like 3 passive skills that all the characters have, like really lends itself well to making you have a different build for every character.
No, definitely. And yeah, you actually mentioned that. I totally agree with you. I think part of the charm for Vampire Survivors was the fact that we were following it in early access. It was the, hey, Matt, get up, new Vampire Survivors update drops, and just being able to see the progression and to be able to follow that in Holocure as well right now is really great to see too, just because it's like, given our fondness of the Hololive VTuber agency, just to be able to see what characters get added next. It is that Smash Brothers feeling of, oh, which generation is being added next. And I really do hope that it does fully become this celebration of Hololive as a whole. Just, the hope is that it touches all the different branches. I know there was a few tweets or comments from the developer noting when someone asked about, oh, when will the Indonesian kind of translation be available as well? And he kind of hinted that would come with a bigger ID update, which you would think, oh, this last major update added Generation Zero plus gamers. So it wouldn't be surprising where, we have this big ID update. In theory, I'm not saying this is all confirmed, but it would be nice to see,
Uh-huh.
here's a big ID update with all 3 generations, or hey, here's a Hollow Stars update with, the first 3 active members of Hollow Live, and then, eventually Uproar, eventually Tempest. But yeah, Matt, I think in terms of a fan celebration, just in between all the different references in the abilities, the items you pick up, the weapons, the collaborations, I think it is this love letter to fans. But at the same time, I do think the gameplay is solid enough where it's actually cool to see people say, hey, I subscribe to the game suggestions subreddit, and when every now and then people are saying, hey, I liked Vampire Survivors, or I like this game, or what game should I check out? And when people recommend, I see a lot of people recommending the Holocures, and I see a lot of people mentioning it in the discussion of the Survivor games, where everyone adds the caveat of, sure, you might not be into VTubers, but you kind of don't have to, because the gameplay stands on its own. And I feel like that will help it kind of establish itself in the space. But as a fan, just having all these different references and, cameos, like, really make it fun just to follow. And Matt, I'm hoping for that Hollow Staff character release at some point as well.
I don't know, man. Achan already became a boss, so I don't know if she's going to become playable.
Is she the new Ridley? Can't be playable? Not?
Can't be playable. Actually, you know what? Red Death became playable, so maybe Achan will be available.
But yeah, Matt, in terms of, I guess we can geek out while we start to close off. In terms of Holocure, I know we saw Hachima being referenced or like previewed. Like, which characters do you want to kind of see first come to the game?
I think one of the ones that I'm like really interested in seeing, just because of I think it'll be they'll have a funny special, is I think Subaru. She's almost definitely gonna have either a duck starting weapon or just a giant like duck falling onto the stage.
Right.
I think Marine is going to be an interesting character. I really want to see how they're going to do her.
Okay.
I'm also interested in seeing how they're going to do Polka. Like, I want to know like what stuff they're going to give her.
Right. That'd be pretty cool. I guess, since we were kind of spoiled with the latest update with Gen Zero and Gamers, plus there was the tweet that says that the next update might take longer to come out, but it would be bigger than expected. So I kind of am at this point expecting maybe Gen 1 and possibly Gen 2.
Yeah, same.
At this point. But if it is bigger than the last one, maybe Gen 3 as well, but that might be pushing it. I'm still thinking that if the Hachima preview wasn't shown, I would expect, or at least I would hope, that the ID expansion or update would be next. But one day, Matt, one day. I think that's the one I'm really, because you know me, Matt, I think in terms of my not preferred, but like my favorite talent, it does come out of the ID branch. So I think that is hopefully the update that comes around that I'm looking forward to the most. But yeah, again, just seeing how not only the HoloLive talent, but other VTubers and I guess just people in the gaming space in general are reacting to Holocure. It's really cool to see, and it is something that I am excited to kind of follow along with it as well. But Matt, in terms of this next big update, anything you would like to see, hope that they would explore or would make an appearance in terms of what the new world would be?
Not really. Like I'm really just looking forward to seeing whatever they're gonna put out. Like
right.
I hope, like you said, that Gen 1 and Gen 2 come out, because I want to play a Jaren, I want to know if Subaru is gonna release in Holocure, or if I'm gonna get that stupid duck plush. Like, I want to know what's gonna happen first.
Matt, over under is Subaru, when Subaru is added to the game, is she just a duck when you play as her?
I honestly think that she just transforms into one as her ultimate.
Yeah,
that has to be what happens.
But yeah, I am pretty excited with Gen 1 and hope maybe 2 coming along, just because I would like to play as Choco. Matsuri, of course, I would like to play as well. So yeah, I'm really interested to see what the future of Holocure is, but also just this genre, since I know this was something we were kind of talking about, but again, with the, at least to me as a layman or as a normie, just seeing how maybe easy it is to kind of enter the space. I would hope that, considering how people are going to try to jump into this genre, that how other developers will kind of bring innovation to it. And I think just different takes overall is something I'm really excited to see, where, I don't know, give me the Hades equivalent of a survivor, and I think that would be pretty dope as well. But yeah, Matt, any closing thoughts on this? We survived this episode, Matt, but any closing thoughts that you'd like to share?
I hope that Vampire Survivors doesn't just dry up
right
after this. I'm sure that they're going to be taking a break now that they've hit 1.0 release.
Right.
But I'm really interested in seeing what they're going to do. Yeah. Because I feel like anybody who's within this genre, or is making games in this genre, or even just playing the genre, Vampire Survivors is the one that you're going to look at to see how they're going to change stuff up.
Right. And I think for me, I'm actually really curious to see how all the different publications and basically people or outlets and I guess enthusiasts put together Game of the Year list, just because that this is the year of the Elden Ring. But I think, I don't know, Vampire Survivors, it will be interesting to see who and if they end up naming Vampire Survivors as Game of the Year. Do they make the concession of, even though this came out, say, in 2021, this was really a 2022 game with its 1.0 release? Or, I don't know. I feel like Vampire Survivors was such a dark horse release this year. It caught the attention of, the gaming community by storm. And I'm actually really curious to see how people start to acknowledge it when it comes to Game of the Year time, just because this, for all intents and purposes, this should be the Elden Ring year, and that's what you would think. But I don't know, Matt, there's just this charm with Vampire Survivors where I think it would make an interesting, horse in the race. Not that it really matters, but that's something that's also been in my mind as well. But yeah, Matt, this was another beefy episode of The Mistake Zone. We talked about some vampires, some survivors, some holocurers. But Matt, I want to thank you, as always, for joining me this week. I want to thank our friends out there. I want to thank, all the developers putting in work, bringing up quality game experiences at low barrier entry points, which is really nice. I want to thank Pagnala. I want to thank the library.
Yep.
I want to thank A-chan. I want to thank Choco. I want to thank Muna. I want to thank all of Hololive. I don't know if I want to thank Geek Jack just yet.
Oh man.
But
no, fuck him, Jared. Fuck Geek Jack. Oh my god. Actually, no. It's not Geek Jack's fault. It's EMS Japan's fault.
One day we'll get our orders, Matt. One day.
Oh my god. Jared, that'd be so sad if there's mold on those or something.
I want to thank the GameStop employee for noticing my Sana varsity jacket.
Oh man.
And yeah, and Matt, I think that's it for this week. Until next week, where we hopefully talk about some Bayonetta. But until then, Matt, take it away.
This was in the Mistake Zone, and we're all out of early access Vampire Survivors.